Welcome. I would like to welcome you to episode 448 of the Unpopular podcast. This is the man, the myth, the legend, Jalen Hunter. Here at the Unpopular podcast, I'm not really asked to agree with me. I'm asking you to hear me out. So, we're getting closer and closer to the NFL season, and what I like to do is I like to do a divisional breakdown. This year, every episode has been two divisions that I want to break down. Last episode, I finished the NFC with the NFC West and the NFC North. And this episode will be me starting the AFC breakdown. I'm going to be doing the AFC East and the AFC South. But to start this episode, I want to give a story. I've said this story before. I've talked about this story before, but I want to start off with a story. Now, no, I have never played professional anything. I've never been a professional athlete. I've never been a professional football player, basketball, anything. But I have played organized sports. I played organized basketball since I was 5 years old, all the way up to college. I played college basketball. And in all walks of life, in all sports realms, you meet different people, different coaches, and with meeting different coaches comes different coaching types. Not all coaches are the same. Obviously, some are more militant, some are more laid back, some are more intense. However they deem fit to coach is how they coach. Now, I think one of the biggest values of a great coach is knowing how to get the best out of your players. And some players react differently to others, or some players react differently to coaching than others. And this is where the story will come in. Playing college basketball, I had a coach that was, you can almost say, a chameleon to different players and how we all communicated. Meaning, I'm not really receptive to getting yelled at constantly. I understand, the heat of the moment. I understand that things can arise, but I don't do well with getting yelled at constantly or getting berated constantly. You can tell me what I do wrong. I respond well to criticism, but I don't really respond well to being yelled at or being cursed at. That doesn't mean that I'm less than a player than somebody else. That just means that I may not be best at you. You're not going to just curse me out, call me all types of names under the sun, and think that I'm going to get right. But I had a teammate, shouts out to Rod, rest in peace, Rod. Unfortunately, he passed away. But I had a teammate who needed that. He needed to get yelled at. He needed to get cursed out to perform better. It's like his, when we talk about Popeye and when he eats the spinach and how he has like a strength boost, that was Rod's strength boost, getting yelled at, getting cursed at. It just flipped a switch on with him. Two completely different players on the same team, but two completely different ways that they responded to yelling, responded to coaching. Not saying that my coach was wrong if he yelled or cursed at me or whatever, because that obviously happened, but he knew that it probably wasn't the best way to coach me. He knew that he would be like, all right, Jay, look, this is where you did wrong. This is what you got to do. Let's go. Instead of Rod, mother blank, 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 blank. And then it just got Rod going. Why did I start with that story? And I'm starting my episode with the AFC East. I'm going to start with the Miami Dolphins. And the reason why I started with that story, because Tua went on a I think it was the Dan Le Batard podcast, and pretty much it described and explained the relationship that he had with former Dolphins head coach Brian Flores. And Tua was expressing that he didn't feel Brian Flores was a good. He's a terrible person. That's a quote. He was saying that Brian Flores would constantly berate him, constantly yell at him, constantly bring him down. Brian Flores would be extremely critical and not his criticism were harsh and strong. And that was one major reason that led to the firing of Brian Flores. Because I remember when he was fired from the Dolphins, and there was confusion. It was confusion because Brian Flores, when he was there, he had a very successful tenure. And that wasn't the norm for Miami in recent years. So when he got fired, we were like, yo, what's going on? Hell, there was even a lawsuit that went down, or that came down from it. Now, Brian Flores, who now is the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, has come out and pretty much said, that it happened. He wishes nothing but success for Tua, who, in all credits, has been very successful as far as numbers-wise under Nate McMillan. Is it Nate McMillan? I'm going to get my man's name right. Mike McDaniel. I'm sorry. I knew that didn't sound right. Under Mike McDaniel, he's been very successful. Led the league in passing yards, top 5 in touchdown. Tua has flourished under Mike McDaniels. Now, here's my take on the whole situation. First, I'm not saying that this is not me saying that one side is correct, one side is not. Obviously, Brian Flores pretty much owned up to what happened. So this isn't me also criticizing Tua, criticizing Brian Flores. It just goes back to the point that there's different ways to coach different players. The way that Brian Flores coached and the way that Brian Flores talked to Tua was unacceptable in that relationship. I'm sure that Brian Flores probably talked to other players the same way he talked to Tua, and it was received better than it was with Tua. But they're different players. They're different people. Brian Flores failed to realize that this is not the most effective way to coach my player. This is not the most effective way to coach my star quarterback, as he does not take criticism like that. You see, you can look at Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick, a lot of the verbiage that Brian Flores was saying to Tua, Bill Belichick said to Tom Brady. The difference is Tom Brady was okay with taking that, was accustomed to taking that. Tua is not. Not saying that Tua is bad, not saying that there's something wrong with Tua. That's just the God honest truth. That's just what it is. I think that Brian Flores, I think the question is, should this be a death sentence for Brian Flores' chances of ever getting a head coaching job again? And I don't think it should. I think that this was a newer head coach, because also he's a defensive. I think he's under the Bill Belichick tree, who, like we just said, Bill Belichick usually talks to all his players like that. And He's a defensive coach. And as we know, there's a difference between defensive players and offensive players. It's just something mentally up there is just different. Not saying that they're mental or anything. I'm just saying there's a different attitude, different mindset that you have being a defensive player. And a lot of the times, the language and the intensity that Brian Flores was addressing Tua with, that's okay to address to a defensive player because they're used to that. Offensive players, not all of them, but a lot of offensive players are not. So this is just me saying that Brian Flores didn't fail at his job as a coach. He failed at recognizing and being adaptable to his players' coaching styles. Meaning, he was not able to understand that the way that you're coaching Tua is not the same way that you have to coach that you can coach somebody else. And I'm not saying that you have to your fundamentals have to change as a coach, but your approach should have to change. It goes back to my story. It goes back to me bringing me into this. If Coach Mitchell, who was my college coach, if Coach Mitchell wanted to bring the best out of me, he knew that there was a way to talk to me compared to talk to someone like, Rod or someone like my man Zell. They respond differently to aggression than I did. Not saying that I was soft, not saying that I was passive, but if you want to get the best out of me, constantly berating and cursing at me just isn't the way to go. For Tua, it's the same way. Now, I will say that some of the things that was alleged that Brian Flores said might have been a little out of control. Might have been a little, all right now, Brian, you need to chill out. And it's understandable why that relationship with him and Tua obviously resulted in Brian Flores getting dismissed from Miami. But this is just a lesson in understand that not all players respond the same to the same type of coaching style. And speaking of coaching style, let's get into this iteration of the Miami Dolphins. The reason why I started with the NFC is because that is widely considered the quote-unquote weaker conference in comparison to the AFC. There's only a few teams that I can truly see compete for a Super Bowl in the NFC. The Eagles are one of them. The Lions are one of them. Obviously, the 49ers are one of them. That's pretty much the extent of the list. Now, there are some teams that could surprise. There are some teams that could be good. Like, we need to see what the Cowboys look like. I'm interested to see what the Rams or the Seahawks look like. But there's those three teams, the 49ers, the Lions, and the Eagles are pretty much the teams in the NFC that I would be shocked if one of those three are not representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. The AFC is much different. The AFC, it's so much competition at damn near every division that outside of obviously the reigning champions, which are the Chiefs, which we'll talk about probably next episode, it's very hard to pinpoint which team can rise up and be the representative for the AFC because of how good this conference is. And when we talk about this Miami Dolphins team, this team easily has one of the best rosters in football. We know how good Tyreek Hill is. He was just ranked number one by his peers as the best player in the NFL. Obviously, you have Devontae Achane, you have Jalen Waddle, you have Raheem. Like, you have pieces. Raheem Morrison. Like, this team is good. The questions that you see, I'm not shocked that Tua had one of his best statistical years last year and under Mike McDaniels. You know, I kind of look at Mike McDaniels the same way I look at Steve Kerr. While, you know, people like Brian Flores and other coaches were able to compile this team outside of Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill came with Mike McDaniel, but it wasn't until Steve Kerr got to the Golden State and he was able to unlock the best parts of Steph Curry, the best parts of Klay Thompson, the best parts of Draymond Green and the Golden State Warriors, which ultimately resulted in 4 championships. While no, the Miami Dolphins do not have a championship, I think that Mike McDaniels and his genius brain and on the offensive side of the ball has been able to unlock, and we get a great Tyreek Hill. We get a great Tua. Don't get me wrong. Tua still has the issues that he's had majority of his career. Whether we talk about some of the injuries, whether we talk about some of the inconsistencies, whether we talk about the playoffs, which we'll get to in a second. Tua still has those issues, but there's no question that we're seeing a much better Tua under Mike McDaniels. And we're seeing a much better Dolphins team under Mike McDaniels. Again, this is a stacked team. Jalen Phillips on the defensive side of the ball. Calais Campbell. You have Jordan Poyer. I would be shocked if this team is not Jalen Ramsey, who's obviously one of the best cornerbacks in football. You also have Kendall Fuller. This team is good, man. This team is great. And there's no question how good this team can be. We've seen it. We've seen this team put up, damn near 100 points against the Broncos last year. This was one of, if not the most explosive offense. But going into this season, I think there needs to be more to prove than proven. And I'll explain that. Again, I've sat here for damn near 18 minutes now expressing what we know from the Dolphins. We know that Tyreek Hill is going to be good. Let's hope that he doesn't get hurt. But last year, he was this close to getting 2,000 yards. If it wasn't for injury, I think he would have got it. So we know how good Tyreek Hill can be. We know how good Jalen Waddle can be. They know how good Jalen Waddle can be because they just paid Jalen Waddle. We know how good Raheem Morrison could be. He led the league, I believe, in touchdowns. We know how good Devon Achane can be, especially when we talk about his speed. We know how good someone like a Calais Campbell can be, a Jalen Phillips can be. We know how good Jalen Ramsey can be, Kendall Fuller can be, Jerron Holland can be, Elijah Campbell can be. We know how good these players can be, right? But what needs to be answered and what has not been answered under this Tua regime is, can this team, with all the speed, all the talent, can this team be effective in the playoffs? You see, one of Miami's biggest, let me say it like this. One of Miami's biggest advantages in the regular season is also a disadvantage once you get to the postseason. Miami's a beautiful place. The state of Florida is a beautiful place. Some places. Weather-wise, it's a beautiful place. Miami plays in a dome. The issue is, and as we've seen, what happens come the postseason when you have to play on the road at a place like, let's say, Kansas City, at a place like Buffalo, at a place like Baltimore, which is colder. We've seen time and time again that Tua Tagovailoa and this Miami team struggles in the playoffs against colder teams. Now, I know you're probably thinking, well, that's what? Are you telling me they struggle against the cold? Yes. You don't pay Tua as much as you pay Tua and Jalen Waddle and keep getting first and second round exits because you have to be the team that plays away. Now, I'm sure that if the Miami Dolphins played at home for the playoffs, which obviously would mean they had home field advantage, then things could be different, but that has not been the case. This has to be a prove it year, especially when you talk about the Tua contract, especially when you talk about, everything that Tua said about Brian Flores, everything that has gone on these last few years with this Miami Dolphins team in the playoffs. This has to be a prove it year. Because like I said, when Tua got the contract, they didn't give Tua that contract so he can get bounced first, second round every year. They expect great things. They didn't pay Jalen. They didn't construct this team just to be religious first and second round exits. I think the noise is loud around this Dolphins team, not because, the usual loudness. No, I think it's loud because there's a lot of expectations. With greatness comes expectations, and we've seen greatness out of this team. We just have not seen it at the right times or the times that really get you paid. I think this has to be a big year for the Dolphins. Because if not, you're really going to start to question a lot of those contracts. I know that the Tua just got his, but there's already questions, especially when we talk about his injury history and his playoff history. There's already questions as to, all right. Well, we'll see now, That's where we're at. I think it's going to be it should be a good year for the Dolphins. It's just none of it matters until they get to the postseason, because the postseason are the real questions start to arise. This team is good enough to compete for a Super Bowl. It's just, will they be able to get there if they indeed have to go on the road and play a team where the elements are not in their favor? We've seen other teams be able to overcome that. We have not seen Tua nor the Miami Dolphins be able to do that. And that will be the question all season for this Miami team. Speaking of questions, let's move over to a team that has seen a lot of movement this offseason. And I'm starting to really fear for Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. There's no question that when we talk about talent, Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. If you look at majority of people's top 5 quarterbacks, you're not going to get too far down before you see Josh Allen's name. There's a lot of people that think Josh Allen is the second best quarterback. There's a lot of people that think Josh Allen is the 5th best. All I know is when there is a rankings of best quarterbacks, you don't really get past 5 without seeing Josh Allen's name somewhere. And rightfully so. Josh Allen is an incredible talent. Whether you talk about his arm strength, he probably has the strongest arm in football. Whether you talk about just the sheer body type and how his body type, along with his running ability, is such a weapon for this Buffalo Bills team. Whether you talk about his accuracy and his ability to get the ball to his best players, Josh Allen has everything you can ask for in a quarterback. Has all the attributes to be a great quarterback. Now, he does have some attributes that hold him back a little bit, but overall, Josh Allen is an exceptional quarterback. I know that. Fans know that. NFL scouts know that. NFL players know that. NFL teams know that. The Buffalo Bills know that. And what I fear is this offseason, we've seen a lot of movement in Buffalo. A lot of movement out of, meaning, you've seen people like Stephon Diggs. You've seen a lot of people leave Buffalo. Travarius Ward, Jordan Poyer. There's been a lot of movement with this Buffalo Bills team. Now, no, it's not all doom and gloom. The defensive side of the ball is still great. AJ Epinza, you still have Von Miller. Ed Oliver is really good. Greg Russo, Matt Milano, he come back from an injury, so he should be good. Rasul Douglas that they got from the Green Bay Packers, I believe. There are still good names. But what I fear is, and what it seems like, I could be wrong, but what it seems like is this team is banking on the greatness of Josh Allen just a little bit too much. What I mean by that is they're hoping that Josh Allen and how great he can be, they're hoping that his greatness can supersede and overcome a poor offensive line, not having the most skilled players around him. Don't get me wrong, man. I think Mac Hollins has a chance to be really good. I think Keon Cole, the rookie sensation out of Florida State, has a chance to be incredible. Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox, the tight ends, there can be a chance where they can be the best tight end duo in football. I didn't say the best tight end. I just think the best tight end duo. We saw Dalton Kincaid kind of come into his own towards the end of the season, and we know how good Dawson Knox can be. You still have James Cook, who kind of came into his own towards the middle and end of the season. He got really good. You have Curtis Samuel from Washington, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, KJ Hamler. Like, you have okay pieces, but you don't have Stephon Diggs. You don't have Gabe Davis. And a lot of the defensive players that you usually depend on and offensive players that you usually depend on are gone. Because Josh Allen is so great, and because in previous years you've had, the wide receiver core that he's had and the defense that he's had and the offensive line that he's had, you would say that the Buffalo Bills are clear-cut Super Bowl caliber team. Is a Super Bowl caliber team. And it's not just because of the movement that happened out of Buffalo, but when you look, you see, the AFC is not the division to play with. I know that's what I mean by that is the AFC is not the division where you can gamble with inferior talent. Because even in your division, the Miami Dolphins, we just talked about. We're going to talk about the New York Jets in a second. We're going to talk about probably tomorrow the Baltimore Ravens, which is in the AFC North, or the Cleveland Browns, or obviously the Kansas City Chiefs, the team that you have not yet been able to get over. You see, this is not the division to say, you know what, we may not have the most talent, but we have one of the best quarterbacks. That's not going to do it for you. So I started this by saying, in past years, it would be foolish not to think that the Buffalo Bills wasn't one of those teams, or isn't one of those teams that should and could vie for a Super Bowl. But as you look today, I don't see it, man. I think Josh Allen is going to be incredible. But one of the biggest hindrances to his game has been he tries to do the knockout blow when all you need is a jab. Like he tries to go for the kill shot in unopportune times, or he tries to be Superman when he doesn't have to be. Well, he has to be for this one. Again, I think Keon Cole's going to be good. Deion Dawkins, the left tackle, he's great. Dalton Kincaid's good. James Cook is good. Curtis Samuel, hopefully he's able to stay healthy, but he's good. It's just they do not have dependability on that offense side, and they really don't have it pretty much. There's a lot of question marks. There's more question marks than certainties on this team. And it seems like, I could be wrong. Obviously, if I'm wrong, we'll see through the season. But it just seems like they're banking a lot on the greatness of Josh Allen. And Josh Allen is great. But he's not great enough to overcome some of the inefficiencies on this team. Because, again, if this was a different division, if this was a different conference, we might have a different story. But this is not. You see how great the Dolphins were last year, record-wise. Even as good as they were, as good as Tua was, when we talk about the individual stats, as good as Tyreek Hill was, they weren't good enough to have home field advantage. The Buffalo Bills did. And they still lost with better talent on this team than what's on this team. And it's not like you can say, let's run it back. No. I hate when teams do that, bro. Like, let's run it back. Like, hold on. Why run it back when what you had before wasn't good enough? Like, wait, what exactly are you running back? And I understand, like, maybe losing at the buzzer. Cool. But, like, what are we talking about? I didn't know Ben DiNucci was on this team. I think that this is one of the first years in a while where there's a lot more question marks than certainties coming out of this team, the Buffalo Bills. And as currently constructed, I don't really see much success. The success, and I think that you're only going to be as good as, obviously, your quarterback, and they have one of the best quarterbacks. But as we've seen, once you get to the playoffs and even closer to the playoffs, you need help. Hell, even the Kansas City Chiefs give Patrick Mahomes, who is widely considered the best quarterback in the world, outside of homie that outside of the flag football guy. Obviously, it's the flag football guy, country mile, then Patrick Mahomes as far as talent. Don't hate. I don't make stuff up. That's what he said. But even the Kansas City Chiefs give Patrick Mahomes notable help. It just seems like this Buffalo Bills team is going to be relying a lot on the greatness of Josh Allen. I don't know how far that's going to be able to take this team in this division, in this conference. So, speaking of greatness, I don't think there's a team in football that has more pressure on this year than the New York Jets. Obviously, last year, we had 4 snaps of Aaron Rodgers in a Jets uniform before his season and essentially the Jets season was over. And I know last year was a circus when we talk about the Jets. Remember, the Jets had Dalvin Cook. The Jets have, obviously, Aaron Rodgers. They had Hard Knocks. There was a lot surrounding the Jets. And I think last year was the first year, well, last year until obviously 4 snaps into the season, but last year was the first year in a while where there was high expectations for a Jets team. The reason why I said that this is one of the most I don't think there's a team that has more pressure than the Jets right now is because of that expectation that has been building since Aaron Rodgers stepped into this organization. A word that gets thrown around a lot, and I throw it around a lot as well. Or a phrase, not a word. A phrase that gets thrown around a lot is Super Bowl or bust. I said that the Detroit Lions, when I talked about the NFC North, I said the Detroit Lions is Super Bowl or bust. I said the Philadelphia Eagles are which obviously when I was talking about the NFC East, I said it's Super Bowl or bust. The 49ers, Super Bowl or bust. You don't make as many moves, get as many names, and have a roster like this and not consider yourself Super Bowl or bust. You don't have Garrett Wilson, Tyron Smith from the Dallas Cowboys, Elijah Vera Tucker, Morgan Moses, Breece Hall, Tyler Conklin, Alan Lazard. You don't have those people on the defensive side of the ball. Quentin Williams, Jermaine Johnson, Will Donald IV, I think that's the fourth. C.J. Mosley, Quincy Williams, Michael Carter II, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. You don't have a team as stacked as this, with a team led by a quarterback as recognized and as decorated as far as what he's done in his entire career as Aaron Rodgers, and not go into the season thinking, and they have Mike Williams, I forgot about that, and not go into the season thinking that it is indeed Super Bowl or bust. And honestly, I don't think this is just me speaking hyperbole. You can kind of feel it. There is quiet optimism for the season. Let's not get it twisted. They know how good they are. And I think all the reports are coming out saying that there is a confidence surrounding the Jets that they know how good they are, and they know that they can make some noise this year in the league. But you can't tell me that we as fans feel the seat getting hotter and hotter for Robert Saleh. If the fans feel that, you can't tell me that Robert Saleh and this organization doesn't know that. You see, at some point, the circus that has been this Jets team has to pay off in one way or the other. And I'm not saying that all of it is on Robert Saleh. But if there is not success, at some point, someone's going to answer for the fact of why this team has not been able to capitalize on the roster that is. It's not this isn't me saying that I think or I hope, right? Like, obviously, I think that I think the Jets have a chance, a good opportunity of being the best team in the AFC East. Yes, I can think that, and I do think that. But this is a little bit more than me just thinking it. Like, I feel you have to be. Because let's not get it confused, man. They have the best overall roster in the AFC East. And you can put this roster up against some of the best teams in the NFL regardless. So while I say I think they can be, I think that has to be, it has to be a reality that this Jets team has to be good. They have to. Because I promise you, if they're not, if they don't reach the expectations that they have set on themselves, there is going to be sweeping changes come. There has to be sweeping changes come next year. Because what happens is your quarterback gets older. Your team as a whole get older. And this is a win now team. This team is built to win now. If you don't win now, then I'm almost sure Robert Saleh is probably going to be out of here. Now, I don't think this team is going to have the same type of season that I had last year, obviously dealing with Aaron Rodgers not being there all of the season. But if this season with Aaron Rodgers looks anything like it did last year, oh yeah, you can bet your bottom dollar that Robert Saleh is out of here. It may not be fair, but that is what it is. I'm gonna say, obviously barring health, because that you always have to say that when we talk about NFL teams. Barring health, this team, the New York Jets, are going to win the AFC East. I think that this team is obviously roster-wise one of the best teams in football. I do think that I think the difference between the Jets and maybe the Buffalo Bills is While the Jets and both the Bills are depending on Herculean and incredible seasons from their quarterbacks, which is Josh Allen, and for the Jets, Aaron Rodgers. I feel like the Jets have given Aaron Rodgers the best chance to succeed when we talk about they have almost reloaded they pretty much reloaded their offensive line. They have one of the best defenses in all of football, not just the AFC, all of football. The Jets have one of the best defenses, if not the best defense. They have one of the best now. Like last year, that was a huge problem, their offensive line. Now they have one of the best offensive lines. So I think that they're hoping that to win both lines of scrimmage. It feels like the Jets have done everything they can to have a successful season. And because of that, this is a huge season for this franchise, for Aaron Rodgers, for the future of Robert Saleh as a head coach. Because there's only so much losing that you can do before people start to really question you. Even on a historically bad team. I think this team is going to be very good. The NFL hopes that this team is going to be very good because they're on a lot of primetime games. So we're going to see a lot of the Jets, kind of like last year. You know, I think Gilbert Arenas says something. This is sort of a PS, but I think Gilbert Arenas says something that I think is very smart. Now, I've seen the NFL do this, but I hope that more leagues do this. When we talk about these primetime games, when we talk about these holiday games, right? I don't know why my brain got here, but this is where we're at. Thank you for taking the journey with me. Obviously, these schedules are happen before the season even starts, and on top of that, networks and primetime net organizations, primetime games are already decided. I think that there should be some type of way to flex these primetime games. Like, what if, now I know it's tradition that the Lions play on Thanksgiving, right? But what if, Lord forbid, the Lions are 0 whatever before Thanksgiving, or the Cowboys are 0 whatever? Shouldn't they be able to get flexed out for a better team? Like, think about it. Thanksgiving for football, Christmas now for football, but Christmas for basketball. That is when the world is pretty much watching. Even if you have family members, even if you have people that aren't NFL fans, aren't NBA fans, there's usually during Christmas, during Thanksgiving, there's usually a TV on that has some type of sports plan. And wouldn't you want your best product to be out there? Meaning that this is an opportunity for a new fan or new fans to get integrated to your product, your service. So wouldn't you, it's like, why would you be married to, okay, well, I know that let's go to basketball and let's say, who's playing? Let's say the Lakers, and I know the Lakers are playing the Golden State Warriors, right? Lord forbid, knock on wood, I hope this doesn't happen, but what happens if LeBron James or Steph Curry gets hurt and both the Lakers and Golden State tank? Who wants to see that on Christmas? And on top of that, you have someone like maybe Memphis. You have someone like, I don't know, what's the team that's not playing? Like Orlando. I don't know if they're playing or not, but OKC, like the Bucks. What if one of those teams are having an incredible season? Wouldn't you want to be able to flex the Lakers Golden State game, because obviously those teams are not good for a better team? I think that sports, these companies should be able to do that. I don't know how I got here. Oh, yes, I do. The Jets. The Jets are on a lot of primetime games, kind of like they were last year. And it kind of soured the experience, and it put their woes on Front Street, because obviously you're on damn near every week a primetime game. And we have to sit and watch Zach Wilson, who just lost the starting job. We'll talk about this. Okay. Yeah, nah. There's a lot of hope and promise around this Jets team, and you can kind of feel it from how training camp is. I know reports are saying it's been kind of like, I know Aaron Rodgers came out and said this is the hardest training camp he's ever been in. You're hearing a lot of people saying it's more militant, like it just feels different. Yeah, man, this is just yeah. This has to be a good season for the Jets, because if not, I'm almost sure that is going to be massive changes. Speaking of massive changes, you know what's funny? It was extremely difficult trying to wrap my head about the position that the New England Patriots are in. Because the New England Patriots find themselves in a position that they have not been in since, well, yeah, they haven't really been in a while. Even with Mac Jones. And bear with me as I try to explain this, but the New England Patriots are in a bad win-lose situation. Let's just say it like that. Let's not get it twisted. This is not a good roster. This roster is not good. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. This roster's not good. You have some pieces. Kendrick Bourne's okay. Hunter Henry's cool. Austin Hooper's cool. Ramondre Stevenson is all right. I think that there's a lot of promise, and they're expecting a lot from Jalen Polk out of Washington. Defensively, you have Christian Barmore. He's got paid too. Shouts out to him. Jabril Peppers. Christian Gonzalez. He was really good. He was a rookie last year who got hurt out of Oregon. They, as a whole, they don't have that good of a team. And with not being that good of a team, obviously there's going to be people that are not realists and that are still living in the dynasty days for the New England Patriots that have long been gone. So there are going to be some people that say, "Oh, the Patriots have to be good." There's nothing good about this roster, bro. Obviously, again, there's pieces, but there's nothing good about this roster. So there should not be high expectations for this roster, like, at all. But in that, shockingly, comes promise, because you have Drake May, the rookie out of North Carolina. And all reports, there hasn't been one report that I've read, that I've seen, that I've heard that says that Drake May is ready for week 1. Now, almost every report said that there is a high upside to Drake May, and there's a lot of promise that Drake May has shown. But not one report, not even the Patriots report people or reporters have said that Drake May is ready to take the realms of this team and bring it to new heights. And walk with me as I explain to you how that's actually a really good thing for this team. You see, Jerod Mayo is not Bill Belichick. And I mean that in the best way possible. I think when you have a name like Bill Belichick and you have a resume like Bill Belichick, there comes unmatched expectations. I do think it's going to be tough for Jerod Mayo to overcome and follow Bill Belichick because of the obviously history that he has with the Patriots. But I think the ending of Bill Belichick's tenure with the Patriots was the best thing that could happen for Jerod Mayo to come in, because it was such a sour stench coming from this organization with Bill Belichick, with Mac Jones, who's now the backup quarterback for the Jaguars, which we'll talk about in a second. That there's not much expectation, and you're already at the bottom of the barrel. So it's like the only thing you can do is go up. But you don't have that good of a team. You have a new head coach. You have a quarterback that's not ready and not going to be starting, because it looks like Jacoby Brissett is going to be starting at the beginning of the season. I think that this is the best case scenario for this team right now, because it allows your team, it allows Drake May it gives the fans, it gives the organization patience with Drake May, so allows him to come along. And even if you're losing, you're expected to lose. You have the worst roster in this division. You arguably have the worst roster in football. Like, there's not much expectation. And with that, it gives you room and it gives you opportunity to grow. And I think that is going to be needed when we talk about this Drake May and this New England Patriots team. The way that it ended with Mac Jones and Bill Belichick helps Jerod Mayo, helps Drake May. And Joe Melton looked pretty good. Joe Melton III, who is the fourth string quarterback now, I guess, since Bailey Zappe's still there. It seems like there's an opportunity for promise in the future. The current, no way in hell. But I think that there is a good future for this organization if they are patient with Drake May. And it seems like there is all the opportunity in the world to be patient, because there's no expectations, honestly, on this team. Or at least there shouldn't be any expectations on this team. Meaning there isn't really much expectation right now on Drake May. Now come 3-4 years later, maybe even next year, it's like, all right, hold on. And on top of that, I don't think that there's going to be a CJ Stroud, Bryce Young type thing, because I don't think that there's a quarterback that was drafted after Drake May, outside of maybe Bo Nix, that is going to really make that much of an impact to have you look. I think if Bo Nix has an incredible season, we'll talk about that next episode. But if Bo Nix has an incredible season, and Drake May doesn't, I don't think it's no harm, no foul. It is what it is. But if Bo Nix has an incredible season and someone like Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams does not have a good season, that is when they're going to turn and say, hold on now. Wait a second. So I think it's a win. Actually, it's a win-win for Drake May. Maybe a win-lose for the organization because I don't think they're going to be good this year. But the win, it gives them patience and it allows the fans, the organization to be patient with this team because they know this roster is not good. And it gives Drake May, who every report says is not ready, it gives him time to develop. So, when we talk about the AFC East, I think it's going to be the Jets number one. I think they have to be number one. If not, they at least have to make the playoffs. Because after last year, after all the moves that have been made, there needs to be success, or I promise you things are going to change. So I think the Jets probably number one, and they have the best roster, in my opinion, in this division. So Jets number one. I have Dolphins number two. I think all the questions with the Dolphins are going to arise come playoff time, which I think that they're definitely good enough to make the playoffs and will make the playoffs. So Dolphins at 2, Buffalo Bills at 3. They have the best quarterback in this division. They also have one of the most eyes or head scratching teams because most of their skill, like the players that they depended on the most, have left. So there's a lot of players that are new that they're trying to depend on. So I don't know. And you have the New England Patriots at 4. They have the worst roster, and there shouldn't be much expectations of winning. So that's my AFC East. Let's go over to the AFC South. Now, this conference is very interesting because this conference is filled with promise. This conference is filled with promise and expectations. Some teams, obviously, there's more promise than expectations. Some teams that there's an equal of both. And obviously, there's some teams that there's more expectation than promise. They paid Trevor Lawrence a handsome amount, making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. Scratch that. Making him one of the highest paid quarterbacks in NFL history. And I know he got killed for saying it. And I don't all the way agree with what Emmanuel Acho said. But I do kind of agree with the sense of a lot of the money that Trevor Lawrence made was because of promise, was because of potential. Because if you have paid him for what he's done, it hasn't been much. Outside of being he did lead the Jaguars to the playoffs, 2 years ago. He did overcome a 27-3 deficit against the Chargers. He did ultimately lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs. I don't think they made the playoffs last year. But Trevor Lawrence is one of the league leaders in interceptions almost every single year. So if you look at what he's done, it hasn't really warranted getting paid what he got paid. Now, if you're talking about the potential that he has, if you're talking about the market and, his leverage I understand that completely because, again, if you look at the landscape of the league, especially quarterbacks, there's not many that you would get if you let Trevor Lawrence walk. So I understand. And if you look at this team, it's a good team. Gabe Davis, Elijah Cooks, Brandon Sheriff at the right guard position, Evan Ingram, Luke Farrell, Travis Etienne, Christian Kirk, Devin Duvernay, Brian Thomas, Denzel Mims. You have Eric Armstead, Trayvon Walker, who was the number 1 pick, I believe. They have a squad. Josh Hines Allen now. It was Josh Allen. The pressure for this team is not on the same level as it is for, let's say, the Jets. I think you would be foolish if you think that their expectations that the Jaguars have are the same type of expectations that the Jets have. That I don't think that's remotely true. But I will say that with money comes high expectations. And this is a good roster. You can't have one of the better rosters in football get paid like one of the best quarterbacks and continue to have flame out after flame out after flame out. The fear that teams run in the there's always a pros and cons to everything, right? A lot of things that anything in life, there comes pros and there comes cons. Now, some things are more pros than cons. Some things are more cons than pros. But everything in life comes with pros and comes with cons. Paying a player, quarterback, running back, point guard, shooting guard, paying a player more on potential than established results has pros and it has cons. One con is what happens if that player does not reach their potential. I think that is the fear that the Jaguars are running right now. That's the gamble that they're running with. I don't think, obviously, in the organization, they should feel this is a Super Bowl caliber team. But anywhere outside the organization, I don't think that this needs to be, I don't think this is a Super Bowl caliber team. I think that this is an incredible team, and they have really good pieces at damn near every position. But I don't think that this is a legitimate Super Bowl caliber team. But one thing that I do know is that when you're getting paid as handsomely as Trevor Lawrence is, you at least need to make the playoffs. You at least need to look better than you did a season before. But what if he doesn't? What if Trevor Lawrence is amongst the league leaders again in interceptions? What if they fall just short yet again of the playoffs? Remember they lost last year to a tanking Tennessee Titans. A Tennessee Titans team that wanted to do nothing else but lose because they were trying their hardest, which ultimately happened. They were trying their hardest to get Derrick Henry up out of there. This is a good team, has good pieces. And there's expectations. And at some point, that potential that you got paid for is going to have to start kicking in. Because if not, that's when you start getting to that bad contract territory. And I'm not saying that they have to win a championship next year. I don't expect them to. But you have to look much better than you did the year before. Especially if you're Trevor Lawrence getting paid what you got paid. Speaking of looking better than last year, I think that this is a very important and a good year incoming for Anthony Richardson and the Indianapolis Colts. This is yet another team where I don't think you should expect Super Bowl caliber anything. You shouldn't, no. But what you hope is you get a healthy season from Anthony Richardson. You get a resurging season from Jonathan Taylor. And again, this is one of those other teams that are really good. Michael Pittman, he's one of the most underrated wide receivers in the league. They have probably one of the best one-two punches at the line position in Quentin Nelson and Ryan Kelly. You have Josh Downs, who's a great deep threat. Like, you have Kwity Paye, DeForest Buckner. This is a good team. Zaire Franklin. This is a great team. This is a good team. And I don't think that they've made that jump yet. Obviously, the Colts, I don't think that they've made that jump to be considered a contender for any postseason anything. I just think that they're young, and I don't think they're as good, obviously, as other teams. So what I think their goal is hopefully get a fully healthy season from Anthony Richardson, which they were not able to do last year, and be better than last year. I heard Kurt Herbstreit talk about quarterback controversy or quarterback issue brewing. I will say this. It's always been said that your backup quarterback should mirror your starting quarterback. And when I mean mirror, I mean there should be the same similarities, the same type of skill sets that your backup quarterback has compared to your starter. Now, obviously, your starting quarterback is better, but there shouldn't be a significant drop-off or a fundamental change as far as skill set when we talk about the starter compared to the bench or compared to the backup. That's one of the biggest reasons why Joe Flacco, who is the topic of our discussion right now, had to go when talking about the Ravens, because once Lamar Jackson got the starting position, Joe Flacco plays absolutely nothing like Lamar Jackson. So it wouldn't have been beneficial for Joe Flacco to remain the backup quarterback for that team because they just fundamentally don't play the same. I'm kind of seeing the same thing with this. So he's the backup for the Colts, Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco. You have Sam Ehlinger, but no. My thing is, why bring Joe Flacco? I get maybe if Joe Flacco is complete, which it looks like he is, but completely willing to take the veteran leadership backup role. But why? And I only ask why because, and again, knock on wood, we hope that this doesn't happen, but we're talking about a player in Anthony Richardson who, even going back to college in Florida, has a issue or a history of injury. Meaning that obviously you hope that he plays the whole season, but there is an opportunity or there is a better chance that he gets hurt at least once or twice in this season compared to him playing the whole season, meaning that there's a good chance that Joe Flacco is going to have to play. Why would you have Joe Flacco if he plays nothing like Anthony Richardson? And what Kurt Hershey was talking about, the whole quarterback controversy, I don't see that happening. Shouldn't. Joe Flacco, there should be no reason why Joe Flacco thinks that he's going to be the starting quarterback. When I'm saying like healthy, nah. Every team's expectation is Super Bowl. Every team's hopes are Super Bowl. Some obviously more realistic than others. I think the goal for this Colts team obviously is to A, be better than last year, and B, really get the best out of Anthony Richardson, because what it looks like is Anthony Richardson has incredible upside. Maybe a higher ceiling than was once thought of when we saw how good he was last year before he got hurt. I think that the defense is going to be good like it usually is, because the Colts defense for the past few years, they've been good. It's just they've dealt, just like this majority of this team has dealt with injury. I don't think that they're good enough to win this division, but I do think that Anthony Richardson has a chance to be one of the better quarterbacks in this division if he's able to stay healthy, and that should be the goal for this team. So we'll see. But I don't expect much outside of that. Again, no offense to the team, and they have some outstanding, like Zaire Franklin. I think he led the league in tackles last year. Like they have some pieces. DeForest Buckner, Oregon legend. They're good. It's just I don't think it's. I need to see what we get out of Anthony Richardson before I be like, oh, they should have postseason aspirations. So, let's move over to the Titans. I can respect it. I may feel one way about somebody, but obviously my opinions don't, and I have absolutely no say-so in whatever an organization does with a player or, what the Tennessee Titans are showing you, and what the Tennessee Titans are doing is they're leaving absolutely no room for mistake. They're leaving absolutely no room for questioning as to their intentions or their views on Will Levis. And I guess rightfully so. Like, I may not believe Will Levis is it, but one thing that the Titans are doing, is they're leaving no room to doubt. Like, you're surrounding him with pieces like a Calvin Ridley, like a Nick Westbrook. I forgot his last name. I don't know how to say his last name, I apologize. Like a Tyler Boyd, DeAndre Hopkins, Tayron Burks, Treylon Brooks. Jesus Christ, Lord. But I think by default, right? By default, there has to be a team that's going to be the quote-unquote worst in the division. I think that this is going to be that team. You still have Jeffrey Simmons on the defensive side of the ball, but do you have Jamal Adams at the safety? You have L'Jarius Sneed that obviously you got from the Kansas City Chiefs, was pretty good. Quandre Diggs, Lord have mercy, that you got from the Seattle Seahawks. I think that this team is going to be okay. I think that the defense has usually been good. If there's one place that's usually better compared to the other, usually the defense is better than the offense. But I by default, I think that this is going to be the worst team of the division. I think they're going to be better than last year. I do think that if they fail, right, if this team does not look good, it isn't because they didn't give Will Levis the pieces to succeed. Again, you have Tony Pollard, who didn't have the best season last year with Dallas. You're hoping that he has a resurgence. Again, DeAndre Hopkins is still Hopkins. Treylon Burks is pretty good. He was a high draft pick. Tyler Boyd comes from Cincinnati. He's okay. Calvin Ridley, who had a really promising season coming back from the Jacksonville Jaguars. There is an opportunity. There's opportunity. I don't see much success from this team. And I think it's because Will Levis, if I will be pleasantly surprised if this team is competitive in the AFC, let alone the AFC South, because again, there has to be a team that is the worst. There has to be a team that finishes last in the division. And I think that this is going to be that team. But I will say that one thing that I will give the Tennessee Titans credit for is they have put all their eggs in this Will Levis basket, because Mason Rudolph and Malik Willis have not shown that they have the ability to take the reins and keep the ship afloat if the starting point guard or starting quarterback gets hurt. But I will also say that this team, they've done their due diligence and they've given Will Levis so many pieces to succeed. So if they do not succeed, I don't think it's because they didn't try their hardest. I think it's just because Will Levis just ain't it. But yeah, because of process of elimination, I think that this team is going to be the worst team in the division. So yeah. But from worst to first, and shocker, spoiler alert, I have not only am I high on the Houston Texans, the NFL should be high and is high on the Houston Texans. You can tell that by how many primetime games they have. You can tell that by how they promote and how CJ Stroud is usually front and center, how he's had a loud, in a good way, season or off season, whether we saw him with Michael Parsons. It's been a loud, in a good way, a loud off season for this Houston Texans team. I know that this sounds crazy. And I know that this is going to be it's like you hear me say, hey, you need to give X amount. You need to give somebody as many pieces as possible. We just praised the Tennessee Titans for giving Will Levis as many pieces as he needs to succeed. And the Houston Texans have done everything in their power to make sure CJ Stroud is going to succeed, because he is surrounded by nothing but weapons. Whether we talk about Joe Mixon, whether we talk about Tank Dell, John Mechie, if he gets right health-wise, Stephon Diggs, Robert Woods, Nico Collins, Noah Brown, Dalton Schultz. This team is stacked with talent. And I think I forgot Cam Akers is on this team. The saying is there's only one ball, which is true. And when you have this much talent on the offensive side of the ball, there's obviously going to be cases and situations where one player doesn't get the amount of touches that he thinks he deserves. And not even thinks. There's going to be times where Tank Dell or Stephon Diggs or Nico Collins does not get the touches that they feel they deserve. And it's not just feel, like their talent warrants that. Tank Dell can be a number one receiver. Stephon Diggs is a number one receiver. Nico Collins is a number one receiver anywhere else. But because they're on the same team, somebody's going to have to take a back seat. And as we've seen with Stephon Diggs, it may not be him. On top of that, Joe Mixon is going to need touches. Like, this is a great problem to have. The issue is, I think the fear, like I said, everything comes with pros and cons, right? I think the fear is, does this stunt or halt, slow down the growth of CJ Stroud? Because I understand that we know how good CJ Stroud can be, seeing as though what we saw last year. When you have a plethora of players that need the ball in their hands and feel that they deserve the ball, and their talent warrants them getting the ball, is that going to hurt him, seeing as though he feels like he has to give, that 1 or 2 or 3, like he has to be diligent? Like I'm very interested to see how CJ Stroud handles all these personalities coming at him. Not saying that he's not going to handle it well, but you have a bunch of players, because let's not forget, Dalton Schultz was incredible last year at the tight end position. You have a bunch of players that feel like they deserve the ball, and their talent warrants that. So I'm very interested to see how they navigate that. And on top of that, as a whole, this team should be exceptional. Will Anderson at the defensive side of the ball. Donnell Hunter that they got from the Minnesota Vikings. You have Derek Stingley Jr., Desmond King, Jimmy Ward. This team, good God almighty. Their biggest issue was they had a tough time stopping the run, and they didn't have that good of an offensive line. And on top of that, Nico Collins, Tank Dell both dealt with injuries last year, and that took away from, obviously, and their run game was trash. Don't get me wrong. Devin Singletary is cool, but he's not Joe Mixon. I don't see much of a weakness with this team. And let's do best and worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, there's injuries galore, or things just don't pan out with this wide receiver core, which I don't know how that would be the case, but if it doesn't work, I don't know. That'd be tough, Best case scenario, this team is good enough to compete for a Super Bowl. Because I didn't even talk about Laramie Tunsil it's a good team. This is a great team. Shaq Mason at the right guard. This is a great team. This is how you build. One thing that I will say about the Texans and the Titans, because the Titans have done this too, is they have built perfectly. I think they're going to, how do I say this? You're going to see if the saying, too much talent, too many pieces, too many weapons, this Houston Texans team is going to test that. Because all indications say that this is way too much talent, which sounds crazy to even say. But this would be the definition of there's too much talent on this team. If that is a real thing, if you're on the fence of is too much talent a real thing, this team will prove it to you. It will debunk that, or it will prove it. Because this team is nothing short of talented. This team is nothing short of stacked. And if it doesn't work out, it's because they just didn't have, they just had too much talent at too many positions. For the AFC South, I have the Texans at the number one. I just think their team is too deep. There's too many talented. It's too much talent to fail, in my opinion. Now, if it does, we'll see. But I just think it's too much talent. And C.J. Stroud showed that he is too good of a quarterback to fail. So I think they're going to be great. I have the Texans at 1. I have the Jaguars at 2. That I know it's fresh, obviously, but that Trevor Lawrence contract, it needs to start showing itself. That potential part needs to start to become reality. And I think with the pieces and how good that team is, I think this is the best opportunity for it. So I have the Jaguars at 2. I have the Colts at 3. Again, I think the most important thing for the Colts is to have a full healthy season for Anthony Richardson and get the best out of him. And I think that when you talk about Jonathan Taylor, hopefully he has a resurgent season. Michael Pittman and some of the stout defensive players that they have, like Zaire Franklin and DeVorest Buckner, I think that this is the best opportunity for the Colts to have a really good season. And the Titans, I don't think the Titans are bad. When we talk about this division, I just don't think that they're the better team. I think that they're the worst team in the division. I know that sounds harsh, but I don't think they're bad. You will know a lot about this team, specifically Will Levis, by the end of the season. If Will Levis is good or not, we'll see, because they've given him a bunch of pieces. Whether we talk about Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins is still there, Treylon Burks, we'll see. So that is my breakdown of the AFC East and AFC South. Obviously, next episode we'll have AFC West and AFC North. To me, those are the two best divisions in football. And we'll talk about it, obviously, next episode. There you have it. That's been today's episode of the Popular Podcast. I truly, truly, truly appreciate you guys. If you want an Unpopular Podcast shirt, hoodie, sweater, long sleeve joggers, the link's in the description below. I have multiple different colors, multiple different designs. Get your Unpopular Podcast merch today. Also, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm trying to get as many subscribers as possible. I appreciate all you guys. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend if you like the content. If you're here at this point and you still haven't subscribed, what are you doing, bro? But please subscribe. It means a lot. Also, if you listen to DSPs, whether that's Apple Podcasts, whether that's Spotify, whether that's Pandora, SoundCloud, please follow, please subscribe. I appreciate all of my supporters, whether that's YouTube, whether that's the DSPs, wherever it is. I appreciate all of you guys, so please follow, please subscribe. Also, follow the socials, follow Instagram, follow TikTok. I post pretty much daily. That's the quickest place that you can get to me. If you want to debate, if you want to tell me how great my takes are, if you want to tell me how terrible my takes are, just keep it respectful. And I don't mind going back and forth. It just means that you're passionate about whatever topic we're talking about. And it means that essentially you are listening to me, and it means a lot. So please follow the socials. That was the AFC East and AFC South. Next episode, obviously, we have the AFC North and AFC West. So until next time, much love.